I like how Vosh thinks he isn't autistic anymore when he imitates the personality and bits of streamers he likes. One, I still call myself autistic for the clout. Two, always open about my influences. Three, being smarmy doesn't invalidate my correct points. You can't get me on this, man. You can't hurt me with that which I use as a shield. Okay, it's just not possible. People got real offended over this. Bosch is wrong about the nature of autism. He doesn't get the developing coping/social skills to compensate for the condition. Doesn't equate to no longer having autism. Terminal Sandy, I'm really sorry, but you're literally you're medically inaccurate on this. There's no underlying fact of autism. There's no underlying data point or gene. It is literally just a descriptor of behaviors. You can look it up. That is literally what it is. It's a descriptor of behaviors. If you no longer have those behaviors, you definitionally no longer have it. It can be because you're masking, and maybe then you're still autistic. Or it can be because your personality has changed, and you might genuinely no longer represent those behaviors. There's no there's no like fact of it under the stop stun locking. It's not a stun lock. It's an important point. I have literally been on this for 5 years. The over medicalization of neuroatypicality is reactionary and contributes not only to a victim mentality, but to a lot of really bad and eugenicist perspectives. It's like Autism Speaks, you know? This is the mindset they come at it from. It's not just a collection of behaviors. There's no sociology to it or anything. It's just, it's just a way people are. It's just a fact of their brains. It's very reactionary. It's very essentialist. I reject it. King, it's bait. That's not what bait means. Part of the misunderstanding is because the way you ranted it made it look to some like you take a very binary stance on this. I just don't see how. My position's the opposite of a binary stance. It's the idea that these are fluid, social, like intersubjectively determined definitions. You know, I don't like if I'm taking like the least binary stance. That's bait. That's not what bait means. This is bait. That was bait. I think people's logic stems from if autism can change or you can choose to be gay, then it's not, and it's not inherited, then it can't be a protected class of people, which is just bullshit. That's true. I mean, I have said that like you can be socialized into being gay or trans, but I also think that about being straight or cis. So it's a consistent position. Yeah, my position has been like the social contagion theory of transness is correct. So is the social contagion theory of cisness. Like it's all like everything falls under that category. The fascist, the eugenicist perspective is that it only applies to the aberrant identity, and that's Hitler shit, which I don't subscribe to, you know. But I've never been one to promote the idea that like, you know, gay people are valid because they're just born that way. Okay, then you would have to assume that gay conversion therapy can work. No, why would I assume that? That doesn't make any sense at all. So a person, because something's socially influenced, that means that you can like torture them into thinking a different thing. What torture would cause a person to like a different sports team? Like the sports team that you like is socially influenced. Obviously, that's not genetic. It's not in your brain. So what kind of torture would you have to subject a person to make them go from being like a Lakers fan to another, I don't know any other, I don't know any other basketball teams to another team fan. Like, so not just for Clippers, sure, not just for a person to say that they don't like the Lakers anymore, but to believe it, to actually. So now you understand that I've outwitted you, correct? Because we do agree that what sports team you like is socially determined. It's not a genetic fact of your brain. But what torture could you subject a person to make them sincerely stop liking that? And why would you do it? You know, like why would you do that? And with sexuality, keep in mind, you're not just torturing a person to make them say they're no longer gay. You would have to torture them to make them no longer gay. How do you do that? As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't work. And even if it did, why would you do it? Can we just get over this point for the love of God? No. I can tell who's been here since 2020 and who hasn't, okay? I'll tell you that much. Vosh failed the cisgender expression test by not knowing another sports team. I know other sports teams. I just don't know other basketball teams. I was going to say like from the Lakers to the Steelers, which I guess would still work because then you could like switch your sport preference or something. But whatever. I don't know. I'm not talking about torture. Well, gay conversion therapy is torture, definitionally. I mean, if you assume being gay is environmental, then you should also assume that you can get out of being gay through environmental processes. Sure, but that doesn't necessarily mean that conversion therapy works. You know, euphemism, conversion therapy. Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know what those are. What environmental features would cause a person to like, I don't know, to like working on Wall Street, but then decide to up and leave and become like a hermit in the mountains? What environmental factors might lead a person to love someone with all their heart for 25 years and then suddenly realize one morning they don't anymore and leave without saying a word to them? I don't know. Like, there are environmental factors here, but like, what could you do to procure? I don't know. Life's complicated. But just because something's socially influenced doesn't mean it's just like a beep boop, switch on, switch off, activate gay gene thing or whatever. Astroenemy, don't be mean. The only person who gets to be uncivil to people in chat is me. Is the distinction an underlying neurochemical thing? You said depression is an illness and autism is a disorder, and I think in my brain those things mean mostly the same thing. Well, I don't even think autism is a disorder. Depression and autism are both like general descriptors of brain conditions. We call depression an illness because we're negatively coding it, Like, the difference between an illness and a condition is whether or not we decide it's good. Your body is currently subject to like a ton of conditions that are fine, like all the bacteria in your guts doing digestive work and all the shit your body's up to. Those are all, I mean, it's conditional, But is it an illness? Well, I like being able to digest some lactose. Not enough. Not as much as I'd like to, but some lactose. That's a condition. Is it an illness? No, it's not hurting me. Depression hurts you. That's just flat bad. Your point is that we should demedicalize autism, but I disagree with that. By your standard, we would have demedicalized dysmorphic syndromes because we just decided they look weird based on social norms. I don't know what you mean. This shit will haunt you in the form of clips over the next 5 years. This is the universe telling you to shut the fuck up. One thing that I really dislike is when people disagree with the stuff that I'm saying, but rather than stand on their own 2 feet, they're like, history will condemn you. The history has its eyes on you, Hamilton. You stepped carefully. Like, come on, why? Well, clips will haunt me? Jeez, I've been saying this for like 5 years, man. Non-autistic people will always discriminate heavily against autistic people at the end of the day. I mean, in my experience, they mostly just give me money to tell me they like my videos. I don't think that's true at all, actually. What is or isn't autism, or what we would or wouldn't consider autism, probably varies a lot, like in different time periods and different societies. If we could like kind of adapt an anachronistic approach to how we, looked at things. And, you'd get a lot of variance in how that stuff expresses itself. One thing, jumping off my previous comment, I think there's some benefit to a diagnosis for neurodivergence because it helps people understand their coping strategies might be different from the advice they're getting for others. I think there's some validity to that, but I think it would be a lot better if we thought of these as personality types rather than conditions. Like, isn't that a thing? You can acknowledge that without a person having a disorder, there's a lot of variance in how people are and how they respond to different kinds of advice, treatment, suggestion. But when you medicalize it, you put everyone in boxes. It's like, oh, it's not like, oh, this person is more susceptible to this, or they're more like willing to do this, they're interested in that. It's like, no. They have this condition. It's depersonalizing, and it's led to a lot of really bad analysis about everything relating to the brain. Everything getting categorized the way that it is. People defining themselves based on labels. People treating everything like that. You realize that like a huge amount of the medical prejudice that trans people experience in the just broadly, like when dealing with doctors, is because our current understanding of gender identity and sex is framed through this like disorder-based model, or gender dysphoria is like a disorder. Or they're trying to attack trans women saying like, oh, you have autogynephilia. Bitch, all women do. They did the test. Hey, woman, do you think it's like hot that you got the curves or whatever? Oh, shit, like 80% of women do. Okay, I guess everyone's got autogynephilia then. Oh, but you try to make it into like a disorder, and it's like everyone uses it to categorize, box people out. It's a good way to like discriminate against people because you can stigmatize the fact they have a disorder rather than they're just, a guy or a girl. I don't know. I don't think it's societal factors that make caffeine and other stimulants have different effects on me. ADHD is genetic. First of all, the way drugs affect you relates to your brain chemistry. Your brain chemistry is altered through your life experiences. That's one. Two, I never said that there's no nature to it. I only said that nurture is a big part of it. For three, not all people with ADHD experience caffeine and other stimulants differently. That's common, but not all, I'm just saying it's a both kind of deal. To explain my earlier comment, dysmorphic syndromes are caused by genetic defects. I don't know what you mean. I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean by dysmorphic syndromes. A group of developmental abnormalities that can cause a recognizable pattern of physical differences. Body dysmorphic disorders. Wait, is this psychological or physical? Is this perceptive or real? I thought body dysmorphic disorder was psychological. I'm sorry, I don't know enough about this to comment on it specifically. I can't talk about it specifically. Is alcoholism a disease? Yes. I think you're obviously right on it being a nature and nurture situation, but you definitely went too hard in chatters yesterday. Nah, I don't think so. People in chat usually think they have leeway to be a cunt to me because they're kind of speaking like through the text or whatever, or I have the power and the dynamic because I'm the one streaming, but you're still talking to a person, you know? I'm usually people kind of earn the responses they get, you know? I try not to lash out at people who are just participating in the conversation. That's fine. I mean, I might get a little tired sometimes, but that's life. Please forgive Lily Krem. She said something just a little bit rude. I think I remember. Vosh, we don't know everything about the brain. Why are you pretending to be omniscient about this? You can't speak about anything with any level of confidence or people are going to jump down your throat. He isn't? No. I was reading a message from Lily Krem. It's all right. She'll be back. Would alcoholism benefit from people calling it a disorder instead of a disease? I don't know. Probably not. I don't see how. It doesn't seem really relevant. Alcoholism is strictly negative. It's a negative thing. It's just why we have negative terms for it. This is not being smarmy, but you take Adderall to help you function. How would you get to that without a diagnosis? You can get medicine from a doctor without the doctor needing to say you have a medical disorder. You know that, right? No, you can't. You literally can. Like, can you not? Well, it depends on the drugs. Well, yeah, of course. But the problem is right now we medicalize everything. Do you not understand? Can you not imagine a world in which we could have these like criteria or these like diagnoses or these assessments without like medically categorizing? Please clarify it, Vosh. I feel like some people think you're advocating for stopping all autism and ADHD diagnosis. I don't know why they'd think that. Chad is confused because our insurance system doesn't work that way. Okay, but that's our insurance system. We're not defending that, are we? Good Lord. It's like gender dysphoria, right? Like, do you guys think that gender dysphoria is a disorder that you should have to be diagnosed with in order to get HRT? I bet most of you don't. And you probably don't think of it that way. So if we could apply that logic and walk it back a little bit, maybe. Does gender dysphoria exist? Sure. But is it a disorder? Well, I feel like a lot of people have it is the issue. Like, we talk about it in the context of trans people, but cisgender people are constantly fussing over not, like, matching their, you know, expression of gender identity. You know, you've got, like, men who are getting the jaw implants or the hair transplants or whatever, and women are getting, like, their body waxed. This is gender-affirming care, right? We don't talk about it like that because it's considered normal. And this is an example of how the medicalization of conditions is used selectively to reaffirm normality, normalcy, whatever, to reaffirm like the hegemonic, the normalcy of some conditions, others aren't. If you, as a cisgender woman, want to look more feminine and want medicine to help you with that, go to a plastic surgeon. No doctor's going to stop you. Yeah, you got to pay, sure, but like whatever. You can do whatever the fuck you want. Get a BBL. Who cares? Get your tits bigger. Get liposuction, Ozempic, whatever. No one's stopping you. No one's going to question. No one's going to say you're gender dysphoric. Nobody's going to say that you have a mismatch between your mind and body when it comes to like your gender expression as a woman. But if you're assigned male at birth and you try to go through all of this, bah! Congratulations. Doctor this, doctor that, assessment, psychiatrist. Oh, are you sure about this? Da-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da. And it's like, okay, so now it's medicalized. It's selectively medicalized. Doesn't make any sense. It's not fair, certainly. It's not reasonable. But it's a consequence of the way we view these things. I highly disagree. It's because of medicalization that trans people have come a long way. Substance Soda, you're in a box. I'm sorry. You're in a box. And I'm not in the business of pretending to be a mime, okay? I'm living free. I feel the wind in my hair. Metaphorically, I'm indoors. The point I'm getting at, or the point I've made, I guess, is that a cis person doesn't even need the medical diagnosis to access the exact same care. The trans person does. Oh, I understand why he hates talking to you guys now. Hey, listen, okay, if everything went by smoothly, okay, you'd never have any poops worth telling your friends about. Sometimes you need a bit of roughage, or whatever they call it. I understand not anchoring to diagnosis, but it can be useful to point in the general direction. Yeah, but you don't need to have a medical condition in order to do that. Roughage makes poop good. Well, it shouldn't, because it sounds like it would make the pooping rough. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Fiber makes poop move. No, I know that. I'm saying that the word roughage, just the way it sounds, roughage, you'd think it'd make it worse, but it doesn't. Can we please move on to the actual topic now, please? I've got bad news for you. We're on the actual... we're talking about the topic. I never should have taught you people stunlock as a term. You're insufferable. You don't know. It's just your word for can we move on? Which, no, I'm the streamer. You're the viewer. What do you mean can we move on? The fuck authority do you think you have in this subject? You just found another term for move on. And what you're saying that's rude. It's a rude thing to say. Yesterday was totally a stunlock. Well, it spared us from having to listen too much to RFK Jr., but don't worry, we'll get back to that. Autism should be assessed by a physician because it's associated with other medical conditions that should be screened for sometimes because they require specific treatment. First of all, you could say that about basically everything. Everything has comorbidities. And second of all, you should just go to the doctor in general. You don't have, it doesn't have to be a condition. Like if you want to talk to a doctor about, you know, certain things pertaining to what you're going through in life, you can have the term. It's about the medicalization of it and the way we treat it. What if the doctor scares me? Well, a lot of them are assholes. Yeah, but sometimes the solution is a chemical that would be otherwise dangerous to self-prescribe. But I'm not asking for self-prescribing. You can still go to a doctor. If you go to a doctor and you explain your depressive symptoms, and he prescribes you something for it, but it's actually bipolar, that can change the outcome significantly. I know, but what does that have to do with anything that I've said? What's the difference between a doctor saying you've got ADHD and medicalization? Or is it the same? The over-medicalization of this terminology doesn't mean, or when I say it's over-medicalized, that doesn't mean you should never go to a doctor about anything, obviously. It means that rather than thinking these as discrete categories or disorders that you have that are like a defined component of your brain, you have to think of them as expressions of a fluid and ever-changing brain chemistry landscape, a tapestry of one's personality and abilities, without any necessary medical stigma. If you have any medical concerns, you should go to a doctor about it. Much in the same way that, like, everybody has, at some points in their life, depressive feelings. That's normal. Everyone's got that at some point or another, right? But that doesn't mean everyone has manic or clinical depression. You should talk to a doctor about it if it's negatively influencing your life. But I think a lot of people have the wrong idea on what depression actually means because they think of it as like a disease you get in your brain that is distinct from the tapestry of feelings one might otherwise experience. It's kind of like the psychological equivalent of when people don't get glasses until they're in their 20s, even though they haven't seen properly since they were 10, because they haven't seen anything clearly. So they don't know that they're not seeing things clearly. You know, you hear about that all the time. People who don't know that they can't see that well until they have that moment where someone's like, oh, you can't read that? And then they go take an eye test or whatever. You get a bad perspective on what's possible, you know? It's not about never getting medicine or never going to the doctor or whatever. I think people's lives are made worse by thinking of these as these like super discrete categories, you know? Yeah, by pathologizing normal human behavior, we make people less able to identify like the range, the spectrum of when they engage in that behavior, what it looks like. Is this what postmodernism is? Well, we're talking about Foucault, so yeah. And it's important to think of these as like the, you know, as a part of that complex, ever-changing tapestry. Because if you don't, people think like, you know, what's the point of me looking into this? What's the point of me trying to learn about this? That's like a distinct category that I don't have. Or if you have that category, you internalize the idea that it's just something you have and therefore can't not have. That's what we lose in a lot of Western medicine. is the lack of a holistic approach to why is the person so, and simply silo all the specialties to the point people think of themselves as distinctly that or instead that. Yeah, I mean that's also a different topic. Like the extent to which we compartmentalize all the different kinds of health when in reality a lot of this stuff is pretty oftentimes like fairly holistic. But yeah. Astrology, but it's medical conditions. Are you agreeing with me or making fun of me? Let me know whether I should unload on you, okay? I can see that some things might get overdiagnosed, prescribed, medicalized, but I do think there's value in certain diagnostic materials because of people taking like Adderall lithium. Yeah, but I don't disagree with that. But you can acknowledge that without the same kind of... I'm not arguing against the concept of prescribing medicine if people need medicine. Or to people who need medicine. Though, and I don't even want to get into this too, because I know, because, you know, people in chat are going to lose their minds over it. But like the overprescription of Ritalin in like the early 2000s, because you had young kids who like acted out in school and were bored or whatever. And then every doctor was like, hey, parent, give them this or something. And then it like actually genuinely was overprescribed. That's a real issue. You know, and I don't even want, because people hate to hear that sometimes things are over prescribed, because then they're like, well, I took a while to get my prescription that I needed. It's two separate issues. The one contributes to the other, because the overprescription, yeah, to young boys who just want to zoom around or whatever, led a lot of people then to get really suspicious of the positive impact Ritalin or any other ADHD medicine could have on people later on. Remember back when you were like a decade or a decade and a half ago, when everyone's first thought of Ritalin was like little kid zombies who were like doing their homework diligently and they lose all their personality? Part of that's perception, not a lot of it's reality, but there was a massive overprescription of it because people were getting upset that young boys wanted to zoom around rather than sitting in boring class all day. Which, like, yeah, no shit. That was a problem with the school system. That is a problem with the school system. It does turn you into a zombie. That is just real. Well, I ain't taking Ritalin. Can I be evil? Weed does not help with ADHD most of the time. True. Yeah. Just like self-medicating. Yes, I remember the Calvin and Hobbes comic. The famous, not real Calvin and Hobbes comic. Is Ritalin worse than Adderall? No. Ritalin's just a different kind of ADHD, man. But I gotta tell you, though, do you think those kids, all those young boys, actually had ADHD? Or do you think they were just antsy, impatient, bored because they were sitting in boring-ass, stuffy classrooms with, like, 3,500 parts per million carbon dioxide or whatever because no one opened the windows? Did everyone suddenly got ADHD? Or they were just, like, cooped up and people were like, well, they're not just bored and antsy. They actually have a disease called ADHD or ADD, and we can fix it. We can cure it with this medicine. And it's like, damn, that happened pretty recently. Like, this was a recent thing, you know? Yeah, you're forcing 10-year-olds to sit still for 8 hours a day. No shit, they're going to be super antsy. But this is an example of how thinking of these from like a medicalized perspective first, rather than more of a holistic psychological wellness perspective, can be really, you know, detrimental. Let the kids run around, you know, obviously. No 10-year-old is internalizing the shit they're learning in a classroom. None of them. Legitimately, I think historians will look back on that and view it as torture. No, I don't know if they'd go with torture, but I think like to an extent you'd get that. Yeah, it's pretty wild. If you actually think about it and you're like, okay, so for the first like 5 years of a kid's life, they run around and shit themselves. If only we could all live in such, you know, splendor. And then they go to like, I don't know, kindergarten where they like play with blocks or paint with their hands or something. And then first grade starts. And from that day forward, for the next like decade, 8 hours a day, their ass is in a chair learning about shit no one cares about. No, yeah, like what the fuck? They're still in prime like tree climbing age or whatever. They should be out bruising their knees. And the uncomfortable you're in like a little shipping storage container that's been hollowed out in the inside and filled with chairs, some like no air conditioning little box with tiny windows cut into the side with no circulation. Everyone's just breathing their carbon dioxide breath or whatever, and they're supposed to learn or internalize or remember any of this information. No wonder nobody's showing up to school. Absenteeism is through the roof. I can't blame kids for not wanting to go to school. Nobody believes it gets you anywhere anyway. Anyway, rather than deal with all of this, we were like, what if we just gave them Ritalin? I'm on Lexapro for anxiety and I feel great. That's great. I'm not anti-medicine. All I am hearing from chat is that you think autism is a personality type you can grow out of and you can control the autism. So what the fuck is going on? Well, everyone needs to learn to control the autism. It is like a personality type of a kind. It's like a condition. It's a state of being. And sometimes you can have it and not have it, or not have it and have it. That happens, yeah. That happens. That's normal. That's fine. Not always. Sometimes you grow up and you're like a given thing, and then you grow out of it, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's masking, sometimes it's not. It's complicated. I don't know anything about ADHD diagnoses for middle-aged women post-pandemic. I just don't know anything about it, so I can't really say. Would you take medication for autism if it existed in the same way you take ADHD medication? I don't even know what the fuck autism medication would do. Make me care less about clothing? I don't even know what that would do. I have no idea what that would do. Like, the ADHD thing's pretty specific. I don't know what it would do with that. Have you considered that people on the autism spectrum that are on the dysfunctional level does not exactly give those vibes of growing out of? Josh Jossie, what the f are you talking about? Have you considered that my ridiculous straw man of your position that you've probably addressed 18 times by now? What? Thank you for the segments. Give me a lot of clarity about myself and things I couldn't really explain about my life. I really do think it's the red pill. You have to embrace the idea that you can change over time. It makes you very strong. You keep demonstrating a fundamental misunderstanding about this. People, come on. You can't come at me with weak shit like that. We've regressed to exercise as fascists. Nah, we're in the dark woke era now. Now we can say bad words and be mean to people. It's, you know, we're back into body fascism in a big way. Foucault would be proud of dark woke. Probably, yeah. You can mitigate the symptoms / expression of autism, but you can't just grow out of it. Okay, again, I'm just going to say this one more time. There isn't an autism gene. There's not a spot in your brain that has autism. It's the only way we describe autism, not just the way we diagnose it, the way we explain it, the way we define it, is by meeting certain criteria. And they're very vague criteria. Intersubjectively determined, different doctors will have different takes on it. It's not empirical. So if you grow up and you no longer meet those criteria because your personality has changed, you no longer have autism by the medical definition. Now, maybe you're masking, so you're like forcing yourself to not meet those criteria. In that case, I'd say you probably do still have it because you're working really hard to not meet those criteria. But if you're not forcing it, if you're not masking, if you're just like, you just changed as a person, then I would say you don't. And that would be like the medical take. That doesn't mean that autism doesn't exist. That doesn't mean it's fake. That doesn't mean everyone can just grow out of it. That doesn't mean you can willpower your way out of it. That's literally just the definition. A good example is therapy for PTSD. People can genuinely overcome their PTSD. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's possible. Bring up studies to prove your point. Google diagnostic criteria for autism. I'm literally describing the criteria. There's no study on what I'm saying because I'm describing the diagnostic criteria. There would, like, this isn't even what you would do. This is like the given information you get before you do a study. Okay, this is all great, but yesterday you said people would have, or less people would have autism if we all went outside more. Yeah, obviously. The environmental conditions that cause PTSD, or sorry, not PTSD, ADHD and autism are definitely being magnified by the fact that everyone just stays indoors all day and like jerks it to Marvel Rivals SFM porn or whatever. Like, yeah, for sure. 100%. COVID caused autism, yeah. PTSD does actually change the body and mind, though. Yes, that's how the brain works. That's how your thoughts change this. That's the magical thing. When you exercise, your body physically changes. When you eat slop food every day, your body physically changes. The thoughts you have physically change your brain. That's not that's brain chemistry. Positivity and negativity have an actual, genuine chemical, physical impact on the way your brain is structured. Over time, it can literally reshape the patterns in your brain. We can use machines to measure different brains and identify a ton of different characteristics about how you think based on the way it's structured. Is Vosh about to tell us about the power of positive thinking? It's pretty important, I would say. Yeah. One time I asked No Stupid Questions on Reddit if people can use exposure therapy to get over aspects of autism like sensitivity issues and stuff, and people got really mad at me. They got mad at you because you're right. You're objectively correct. They can. People just don't like, people really don't, especially Redditors, because I bet there's a lot of overlap in terms of diagnoses there. But yeah, they don't like that. But it's true. Yeah, it's 100% true. Be like anyone, or not anyone, I should say, but generally speaking, anyone, not everyone, but anyone, can overcome something like sensitivity to food or noise or whatever. It doesn't matter if you have autism or not. Having autism doesn't mean that your sensitivity to noise is magical. Like, oh, autistic people can overcome this, but autistic people, no, that's locked in. I hate that mentality of weakness. It keeps you people in the dirt. That keeps you people in the dirt. You think like, oh, no, 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 no. Maybe other people can overcome something negative and improve their life, but I can't because a doctor put a category on my behavior. Hate that shit. Me thinking cilantro tastes like dish soap is genetic, though. Oh yeah, I'm not saying everything can be learned or unlearned. It just varies person to person, you know. Substance soda, I have already answered this. I've already addressed this. You can't. You've listened to it. You've heard what I said. We can't keep doing this back and forth. We can't keep dancing like this. As someone who has autism, I can testify to this. I started out being so scared of noise that a hand dryer could bring me to tears. Now I've been to airports and stock car races and enjoyed them. Cheesy meatball, that's fantastic. You've got more balls than every other motherfucker here has got an issue with this. That's great. That's great. That's fantastic. That's strength mentality right there. You have a thing. You want to change a thing. You change the thing. You try your best. You don't always succeed. That's fine. That's life. But you try your best. And that's great. That's really, really good. This reminds me of that post that said, I hate to inform everyone, but proper diet and exercise actually did help my mental health. Yeah, people hate to hear that. Yeah, Sanji-san, people don't like accountability. I think a lot of people just don't like to think of it that way. So the autism is why, but it doesn't set anything in stone. The autism is just a description of a set of characteristics which include things, in many cases, like noise sensitivity or whatever. But there's nothing magical about you having noise sensitivity and being diagnosed as autistic that makes it different from a person being noise sensitive and not being diagnosed as autistic. In many cases, it's just noise sensitivity. It's not like it's not like a spiritual difference or like a component in your brain that's immovable or whatever. I just want people to be happy. I think some of you make yourselves miserable. I don't like this angle as someone who's had lifelong sensitivity to light and sound because I had to sit out so many things I wanted to do because of the debilitating migraines because of them. Painkillers get me through the day. I'd love to do so much. I really would. I try to do what I can with my body. The idea that it's a skill issue is not true for me. Respectfully, and I'm sorry, you've got bananas in your ears. I literally said like 50 times. It's not everyone all the time. It's not a skill. The fact that people can sometimes change things about themselves doesn't mean everyone always can. I'm not saying you can grow a missing leg back or whatever, you know? It's not an attack against you. Everyone's got their, ups and downs. Not to attack you or anything. I'm just saying, like, I'm just not saying that. This is a purely liberatory mentality, all right? This isn't about getting down on anyone. The only thing more pathetic than the victim mentality that makes people think there's no way for them to improve in the things in their life they want to improve on is people who debase themselves and attack themselves and feel all down in the dirt whenever they fail to improve in a thing they want to improve on. That shit's even worse. Oh, I want to lose weight, but I ate a little too much food today. Oh, I'm miserable. Shut the fuck up. Nobody cares. I love eating food, okay? If you get down in the dumps over every mistake you make or every this or every that, you'll be miserable forever.